Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name's Acharimak. Thanks for joining me and thank you so much for being part of this channel. And yeah, for those who are watching me for the first time, feel welcomed. This is the Kikuyu channel where we learn Kikuyu culture, Kikuyu language and everything to do with Kikuyu. So if you are here for the first time, I'm here today and I'm not here for teaching Kikuyu language, but we are going to go back to our Kikuyu culture. So I'm going to go back to Kikuyu culture and we are going to learn a few, one or two, three things about the culture and some of those things that were done back in the days, just to make you guys aware of our traditions, our culture, our myth, and everything to do with our heritage. As you all know, I'm a Kikuyu, born in Kenya, raised in Kenya, a proud Kikuyu, and I'm right here to educate everyone and even to give this information to all interesting, to everyone who feel interested to learn my culture and everybody in the world who acknowledges Kikuyu, and yeah, anyone who is interested to know my culture, my language, and everything to do with Kikuyu. So, without wasting much time, let's get started. Now, the topic for today is we're going to learn household essentials in a Kikuyu traditional home. Household essentials in a Kikuyu traditional home. These are one of those these are some of those household essentials that were back in the days and used in the Kikuyu traditional home. So the first essential that we have, or the first item that we have, or the first thing that we are going to learn is getaroro. Getaroro. Getaroro is a Kikuyu winnowing tray. It's a tray-like item that was used for winnowing grains, cereals, maize, beans, anything in the category of cereals and grains. So a Kikuyu winnowing tray is known as getaroro. I wish I had one getaroro in my surrounding here. I would have directly shown you. Apparently I don't have it right here with me, but I will try to insert some pictures just to make you to show you what I mean with getaroro. Now let's get to know this item. It was used for winnowing grains, as I have already mentioned earlier, and it was made from thin stripes of mogio cut longitudinally and held together tightly to form a circular kind of tray. So mogio was these thin stripes that were used to make getaroro, or that winnowing tray. Now, as we have already seen, it was after food was served was served from a pot, the remaining food was placed on a getaroro and usually placed somewhere cool, like a granary. A granary is, let's say, like a store. That's the name we give to a granary. Now, anyone could help himself or herself, including the passerbyers, with that food that was stored on the getaroro. Now, we'll see when food was cooked, the remaining food from the pot was placed in a getaroro. And then that food from the getaroro was put in a cool place known as the granary. So anybody or anywhere, anyone in the community would serve him or herself from that food stored in the gitaroro. Now, that is the other function that we see. It was used for winnowing grains or cereals. It was also used for storing food that was left from the pot. And as we see, that food was, anyone would access the food, including the passerbyers or the people who passed by the road. The other thing is, we also learned that a good gitaroro was smeared with cow dung. This is the interesting part of it. Now, a very good gitaroro, there were, of course, different kinds of gitaroro, or this Kikuyu winnowing tray. There were different types, and that good quality one was smeared with cow dung. That meaning when the cow dung got dried, the gitaroro was dried completely, and the item was dehydrated from water. You can imagine, after you have smeared cow dung on that kind of tray, of course it dries up and there is no moisture again left on the smeared cow dung. So what happened, the food that was placed in that gitaroro, the leftover food, was preserved on that smeared cow dung gitaroro, and with that it would stay for days, for weeks, or even months. Why? Because being that it was smeared with cow dung, once the cow dung dried up, there was no moisture left on the surface. So that means, since the food, let's say for example, you cook some mokimo or irio. I have already mentioned in a few videos what mokimo or irio is. Maybe to remind you again, it's a mixture of potatoes or bananas mixed with pumpkin leaves or wild spinach or any kind of grains. So that kind of mixture, which is called mokimo or irio, once it was left over, it was of course wet because of that the vegetables and the whole consistency of the food. So what happened when it was placed on that gitaroro that was smeared with cow dung, after the whole cow dung had dried up, it was deprived with moisture. That's meaning when the food was put on that place, the food, the cow dung or the content on that gitaroro absorbed the moisture from the food, and thus preserving the food itself and making the food to preserve or to be stored or to stay for a few days or even weeks, and making the food a bit or more harder or kind of stone like. So we see that back in the days, there were no fridges, there were no preservatives or anything that was used, chemical or stuff to preserve food. So people used this kind of gitaroro that was smeared with cow dung, and it was used to preserve food. And since there was that kind of preservation that absorbed moisture from the food, it made the food to stay quite long, and there was no space for mold or any microorganism growing on the food like we see today. When you place this kind of food in an aluminium tray, it starts sweating up, and once there's moisture in the food, that's where we see mold and slime growing, and that's when we start smelling some awful smells from food, indicating that the food has gone bad. So we see that gitaroro was a good, was a cleanser, a preserver, and also an African fridge. It was a wonder, a magical wonder in our traditional homes, and even up to today, they are still it still serves a very very important role in the house of Kikuyus, or in those people that still maintain their cultures. And we find that it is still a very common and essential item in our Kikuyu homes. So the next item that we have is nyogo. The next item that we have is nyogo. Nyogo is simply a clay um a special, well, nyongo is simply a pot, but it's a pot that is made of clay. So you can imagine it was made from rioba. Rioba is a special clay done in a particular area. As I have already said, nyogo was a clay pot. It was a certain kind of a clay pot that was made of rioba. Rioba, which is clay that was a special clay dug in a particular area. Now, um, they were made by women who were potters using a mixture of three types of clay, thus red, white, and black, obtained from swamps and along riversides. That's how the nyogo were made. They were made by women who were potters. Earlier in the days, we had professions like potters, ironmen, medicine men, and so on and so forth. So the potters, who are women, were the ones who used to make this nyogo, or the pots, and they were basically from red, white, or black clay. Now, nyogo, exactly. Now, nyogo was also very common in the traditional Kikuyu homes. It was used for cooking food. We know very well that we have githeri, which is a very, very, very common Kikuyu food that dates back in the days. And nyogo was used for boiling the maize and the beans. Not only was it used for making githeri, it was also used for making mokimo, and also used for boiling water and all kinds of cooking that were taking place in the Kikuyu home. So that's how simply nyogo was used and how it came to place. If I had the item, I would basically just show you, but since I don't have, I will try my very best and insert a picture on this item. The other thing that we have is kyodo. Kyodo is a woven basket made in various shapes, colors, and sizes, decorated with geometric designs. These are strings for making baskets. Okay, strings for making baskets were gathered from the back of an from the back of a indigenous shrub. Now, as we have already seen, kyodo, which is a basket. It's basically a basket. I actually have kyodo, dena kyodo. I have kyondo right here with me. I'm going to pick it up and show you guys. But before we get there, let me continue first. Now, we have seen that kyodo was a woven basket made in various shapes, colors, and sizes, decorated with geometric designs. Strings for making baskets were gathered from the bark of indigenous shrubs. Now, there were very many kind of kyondos made of different designs, of shapes, sizes, and so on and so on. and so forth. The strings that were used for making these kyondos, we have already seen they were derived from certain barks of indigenous shrubs. Now, I have seen my grandmother making the kyondos. This was early in the 90s, and I think it was still practiced even up to date. I think it's still done, but not that much. But when I was growing up, I learned myself how to make a kyondo, which is this Kikuyu basket, and it's a very simple. It's not really hard. It's a very simple technique, and I saw my grandmother using, I think it was something to do with sisal and nylon kind of thread. So it was kind of weaving, going in a circular direction, forming a basket, which is the kyondo. We see that kyondo is very common in the Kikuyu homes, or even in the traditional Kikuyu homes. It was basically used for carrying items, for transporting items, and this was a bag specific use by women. It was an item that was used only by women for taking goods to the market, taking goods to while visiting people, and so on and so forth. It was basically like a shopping bag, as we know today. Nowadays, people use bags, shopping bags, or this kind of modern bags. So basically, kyondo was that kind of a bag for transporting or for carrying stuff, foodstuffs, or any other item that was to be transported from point A to B. Even when women went to the garden to harvest, they used the kyondo to carry the food to from the garden to the home, or from the fields to the family. For example, sweet potatoes, for example, bananas or maize, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to pick my kyondo and I'm going to show you guys. Stay tuned. So I'm back here, guys. I'm going to show you what I mean. This is the modern kyondo. Now, as you can see, it is made of these strings. This is what I am saying. I'm calling the strings that were from indigenous barks of certain shrubs. But I think this is basically completely different, and I think this is made from sisal. So this is how it looks like. I have another variation, and for this kind of kyondo, they also used some kind of leather to make the handles and even the zipping or the covering. So I'm going to show you another type of kyondo, which is basically almost the same as the one I showed you before. This is just how it looks like. It's just put right here on the shoulders, and you can use it for your outings, your shoppings, or anything that you want. This is the modern kyondo, so don't confuse it with what I'm speaking about. It's just the modern version of kyondo. Very beautiful and nice. I still have another one. That's the kyondo. Also still the modern type. As I said, they use some kind of leather to do the zipping or the closing here, and the handles as well. So you can see it is basically a kind of a bag which is hollow like. You can put anything you want, any item, and transport them from A to B. And yeah, just carry it like this, and you just look like any other Kikuyu woman or a very respectful Mutumia wa Agatha. Yeah, those who don't know Mutumia wa Agatha, I will speak about it in a different video, but it basically means a responsible woman who is aware of his home, or who is looking after his home in a good manner. Now let's continue, guys. Sorry for interrupting, but yeah, I just wanted to show you. Now the other thing that we're going to learn, the other item that was very common in the Kikuyu home, is keihori. Keihori was something like, it was let's say like a serving spoon. That's how I can describe it. It was basically a gourd that was cut into half. So the half side of a gourd was the keihori. It basically just looks like a spoon, but not really like a spoon. Or it also looks like a plate, but also not like a plate, or even like a bowl in that art. So keihori was used for serving food. For example, for serving mokimo, which I have already mentioned earlier before what that is, for serving githeri or any kind of food, or even for serving uji, which is porridge. If you don't know what uji or oshoro or porridge is, please don't forget to go back at one there's a recent video I uploaded before this one. Just get there and educate yourself about uji or oshoro. So the keihori was used for serving and also for drinking uji or porridge or oshoro. It was basically an item used for serving and also for drinking, or also for drinking or for eating as certain kinds of food. Now we will continue, and the next item we are going to look at is the item called itara. Itara is where the firewood was stored. Itara, that's what we call itara. Now we know very well, back in the days, in the early Kikuyu traditional homes, people did not cook food, or did not cook with gas, electricity, or all these kind of modern appliances. All that they used was wood or firewood. So for them to store the firewood for cooking the food, you had to put the firewood on a place called itara. Itara was that place where you stored the firewood. And the purpose for this was, for example, when when a tree was cut down for firewood, there were occasions when the wood was still wet. And you know very well, if you have wet wood or wet firewood, it's very difficult to get fire. So what happened, the firewood, or the wood that was derived from that tree, was stored on itara, and itara was always directly from the fire, like from the three stone fireplace. So itara was a certain kind of a lined up level which was above the fireplace, and the smoke that came from the fireplace, it went directly to the itara and hitting that wood that was stored there, making it to dry and making it even ready for cooking or for other purposes of making fire. So itara was basically used for storing the firewood, or even for putting the wet wood or the wet firewood to dry up and make it ready to make the fire. I hope you can understand what I mean. So that is what we call itara. Itara. Now the next thing we are going to look at is go. Go. When I'm speaking about go, I am speaking about firewood. This is basically what we used to call, or what is called in Kikuyu, firewood. Firewood is go. Now, when I was talking previously about itara, I mentioned firewood, and we see that itara and firewood, or itara and go, they go together, one together in hand. So the go were the ones that were used for making fire, or for cooking, or for any kind of any cooking or fire that was run down in the Kikuyu homes. So go was the firewood, and the firewood was placed on itara. Now the next thing we are going to look at is rikorea go kana rikorea mahiga. Rikorea, excuse me, rikorea go, I have already mentioned, I have said that go are firewood. Rikorea go is that the 3-stone fire. So we know very well, back in the days there was no electricity, there was no gas, and anything to do with any electrical or automatic fire for cooking. So people used the 3-stone fire to make food, or even for cooking, or anything that they warmed, or even they heated, or warming themselves, anything. So that is what we call riko reago. Riko is basically translated to kitchen. Reago is kitchen from firewood. Reago, go, I have already said, is firewood. Or the other name for that is riko rea mahiga. Mahiga are the stones. Stones are called mahiga. Back in the days, the Kikuyu traditional homes, we find that the fire was made of 3 stones. There was the first stone, and the 2 that were right and left, and that's being a place for the pot, making a place for the pot to stand firm while cooking, and also giving space on 3 dimensions for putting firewood and making the fire to continue glowing, or making the cooking easier. So that is basically what we call riko rea mahiga. Riko, kitchen. Rea, for, or the kitchen for the 3-stone kitchen. Riko rea mahiga. Riko rea mahiga. Now let's go ahead. The next thing we are going to look at is kenyageoshoro. Kenyageoshoro was basically the gourd that was used for storing porridge. I have already mentioned before that porridge was a very, very common food in the traditional Kikuyu homes, and even up to today we still have porridge, which is still very common. Now we see that Kenya means gourd, and it is that kind of gourd that was used for storing porridge, or for making porridge. Kenya yoshoro, which was a very common item or essential in the Kikuyu traditional home. The other thing we're going to look at is motoriro. Motoriro was an iron, it was an iron like rod which had a hollow inside, and the purpose for this was to blow the fire. Motoriro, motoriro, that's how we call it. It's a hollow like kind of an iron, made of iron, and it was used for blowing the fire. Remember, I have already mentioned that people back in the days, the Kikuyu back in the days, cooked with the 3 stone, or they cooked with firewood. So once you lit the firewood on, sometimes it went down and there was no fire, there was no flaming. So for you to put back the fire, you had to use the motoriro to blow in your air and blow the fire up. So this was the purpose for the motoriro. It is still common even up to today for those who have the traditional Kikuyu kitchen, and I know this even back from the rural areas. It is even still used in other communities like the Kisis and other people, other tribes in Kenya. So I think it's something that is very common, and I know a good amount of people should know it. Now, the other thing that we are going to look at is mokoa wago kana mahuti, or mohedo wago kana mahuti. Now, mokoa or mohedo was the rope. That's simply a sisal kind of rope. It was a rope that was made from sisal, actually made from this the same item, oops, excuse me, the same material that is used for making these kiondos, this kind of sisal. This is how the mokwa was made. It was actually it was a rope that was used for carrying feeds for the animals, or even carrying firewood. So when the women went to fetch firewood, they used mokoa, or also known as mohedo, to carry the firewood from point A to B, or from the forest to the homes. So they basically use the mokoa to tie up the firewood or other weeds for the animals, or other stuffs like the banana leaves, or anything that they fetched on the fields or in the